The receipt. I found out my wife was cheating on me because of a parking receipt that fell out of a jacket she hadn't worn in 8 months. That's it. That's the whole stupid, unglamorous beginning of the worst year of my life. Not a lipstick stain, not a mysterious phone call at 2 a.m. A parking receipt from a garage 40 minutes from our house, dated a Tuesday. She told me she was at her sister's. I want to say I knew immediately. I want to say some instinct kicked in, and I felt the floor tilt under me. But the truth is, I almost threw it away without looking at it twice. I was cleaning out the whole closet because we were having new carpet installed, and I was moving winter coats into garbage bags for the church donation bin, and a small folded piece of thermal paper slipped out of the inside pocket of Melissa's gray wool coat and landed face up on the hardwood. I picked it up because I'm the kind of person who picks things up. That's who I was before all of this. The kind of guy who returns the extra dollar the cashier gives him by mistake. The kind of guy who checks twice that the stove is off. My name is Daniel Whitfield. I was 34 years old at the time, and I built bridges for a living. Structural engineer. 11 years at a mid-sized firm in Columbus, Ohio. The kind of job where you spend your whole career making sure things don't fall down. I liked that about myself. I liked being the guy who made sure things didn't fall down. I didn't know yet that my own life was already collapsing, quietly, one beam at a time, and I was the last person in the building to notice. Part 1. What I Thought I Had. Melissa and I met at a coworker's barbecue 6 years before that carpet got replaced. She was standing by the cooler, laughing at something someone said, head tipped back, dark hair catching the last of the evening light. And I remembered thinking, with the kind of certainty you only get a few times in your life, that's the one. She worked in marketing, brand strategy, client accounts, the kind of job that required her to be charming for a living, and she was good at it. Genuinely good, not fake good. She remembered people's kids' names, she sent handwritten thank you notes. She could walk into a room of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and a lunch date. I used to joke that she'd been assigned to me as a reward for good behavior. Because I did not have that gift. I was quieter, steadier. The guy who checked the math twice. We got married on a Saturday in October, under string lights in her parents' backyard in Dayton, and her father, a big sentimental man named Carl who cried at every wedding he'd ever attended, including apparently his own, pulled me aside during the reception and told me, "You're the first one I've trusted with her." I didn't know then how much weight that sentence would carry later. For the first 4 years, I would have told you, without hesitation, that we were happy. Not movie happy, real happy. The kind with grocery list arguments and mismatched schedules and occasional silence at dinner because we were both tired. But underneath it, something solid. She used to leave notes in my lunch bag. Dumb little things. "You've got this" scrawled on a napkin before a big client presentation. Or a doodle of a stick figure bridge falling down with the caption, "Not on your watch." I kept every one of them in a shoebox in my closet. I still have that shoebox. I haven't opened it since. The cracks, and I use that word deliberately, because I spent a career learning how cracks start small and spread under pressure you don't see coming, started about a year and a half before the parking receipt. It began with her phone, not in a dramatic way. She'd always been someone who kept her phone close, but around that time she started taking it into the bathroom when she showered. Started angling the screen away from me at dinner. Started putting a passcode on it after 4 years of us both knowing each other's passcodes, and when I asked about it, almost as a joke, she said, "Work stuff. Some of the client accounts have new security policies," and I believed her, because why wouldn't I? Then came the schedule changes. Melissa had always gone to a 6 a.m. spin class 3 days a week, but that spring she added a 4th day, then started staying afterward, for coffee with the girls from class, coming home closer to 9 some mornings instead of 7:30. She joined a new gym that fall, nicer, she said, better equipment, and I noted, in the back of my mind, that it was on the opposite side of town from our house, a 25-minute drive each way for a gym membership, when there were 2 gyms within a mile of us. I want to be honest about something here because I think it matters for the rest of this story. I noticed these things. I'm not an idiot. I noticed the new gym, the phone, the extra days. But here's what nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't confront you. It erodes you so slowly that by the time you'd have reason to be suspicious, you've already built 6 months of small justifications to explain it away. She's stressed at work. She's trying to get healthier. She's allowed to have friends I don't know. I trusted her more than I trusted my own gut. And for a long time, I thought that made me a good husband. I know now it just made me an easy one to fool. There was a night in July, about 8 months before the receipt, that I think about more than almost any other memory from that year. We were on the back porch, and she'd had 2 glasses of wine, which was one more than usual for her, and she got quiet in that particular way. She got quiet when something was sitting heavy on her. I asked what was wrong. She looked at me for a long moment. I remember her eyes were glassy, not from the wine, I don't think. And she said, "Do you ever feel like you missed doing something big with your life? Like everyone else is out there living and we're just maintaining?" I told her no, honestly. I told her that building things that keep people safe felt big enough to me, that our life together felt big enough to me. She smiled and said, "That's why I love you," and changed the subject to whether we should repaint the guest room. I didn't know it then, but that conversation was the closest she ever came to telling me the truth outright. I've replayed it 100 times since, wondering what would have happened if I'd pushed, if I'd said, "What's going on, Mel? Talk to me." I'll never know. That's one of the specific cruelties of hindsight. It hands you the exact door you should have walked through long after it's locked. Part 2. The Discovery. The parking receipt was from a garage attached to the Baymont Suites of Route 33, dated a Tuesday in March, timestamp 2:47 p.m. entry, 6:12 p.m. exit. Melissa had told me that Tuesday she was driving to her sister Claire's place in Springfield to help pack for Claire's move, and that she'd probably be gone until dinner. Springfield is 30 minutes from our house in the opposite direction from that garage. I stood in the hallway holding that little curl of thermal paper for what felt like 10 minutes but was probably 10 seconds. My first instinct, and I'm not proud of this, but I said I'd tell this honestly, was to protect the explanation. My brain, without my permission, started building the innocent version. Maybe she had a work thing near there. Maybe she gave someone a ride and needed to validate parking. Maybe the coat isn't even mine to interrogate. Maybe this predates our marriage. I checked the date again. It didn't predate anything. It was 8 months old, which put it squarely inside the era of the new gym and the phone passcode and the extra spin class day. I didn't confront her that night. I want to explain why, because I think it's the part people judge the most when they hear stories like this. I didn't confront her because I am, by nature and by profession, a person who does not act on a single data point. One receipt is an anomaly. It is not proof. And some ugly, self-protective part of me understood that the moment I said the words out loud, "Why were you at a hotel 40 minutes from Claire's on a day you told me you were with Claire?" I would be starting something I couldn't stop, and I wasn't ready to stop being a man who trusted his wife. So instead, I did something worse, in a way. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The way you'd inspect a structure you suspected had a hidden fault. Quietly, methodically, without letting the building know you were checking. Over the next 3 weeks, I noticed things I'd apparently trained myself not to notice for over a year. She started keeping her phone face down even at home, even when we were just watching TV. She'd taken to charging it in the bathroom overnight instead of on her nightstand, which she explained as, "The light from the charger keeps me up." She'd started using a new perfume, something warmer, muskier than the citrus stuff she'd worn for years. And when I complimented it once just to see her reaction, she seemed almost startled. Like she hadn't expected me to be paying attention to something as small as scent. Then came the night I actually saw it. Not proof, exactly, but enough. We were in bed, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She'd forgotten to take it into the bathroom, which almost never happened by then. I wasn't trying to look. I want to be clear about that because I think intention matters, even in a story like this. I glanced over out of pure reflex the way anyone glances at a lit-up screen in a dark room, and I saw the notification banner just for the second or two before it faded. A text from a contact saved as Pilates Sarah. The preview read, "Can't stop thinking about Tuesday. When can I see you again?" I lay there in the dark, and I did not move. I did not say a word. My heart was going so hard I was sure she could hear it. I remember thinking, with a strange detached clarity, that is not how you text your Pilates friend. Melissa's real name is not disguised in a contact called Pilates Sarah. I understood in that moment, lying rigid next to a woman I'd shared a bed with for 6 years, that Pilates Sarah was a name she'd invented, either to hide a man's actual name, or because Sarah was a cover for a name I might recognize. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there running numbers the way I run load calculations at work, except the variable I was solving for was how long has this been going on, and every version of the math came out worse than the last. Part 3. The investigation. I want to tell you that I marched into the kitchen the next morning and demanded answers. I didn't. Instead, I did something that I think surprised even me. I went cold. Not distant in a way she'd notice. I was careful about that. But internally, methodically cold. I decided I wasn't going to react until I understood the entire shape of what I was dealing with. I'd learned that lesson from work too. You don't repair a structure based on the one visible crack. You map the whole thing first, or you fix the wrong problem, and the building comes down anyway. I bought a cheap laptop with cash from a Best Buy across town. Something that couldn't be traced to my usual accounts or search history on our shared family computer. I started keeping a private log, dates, timestamps, small inconsistencies, screenshots of anything I happened to see. I know how that sounds. I promise you it felt worse to do than it sounds to describe. The first real break came through our joint bank account, which I still had full access to and had genuinely never scrutinized before, because we'd always trusted each other with money. I started actually reading the statements instead of skimming them. There were 3 charges over the past 4 months to a hotel booking platform, small amounts, $40, $60, $85, that I now understood were partial payments, deposits, something. There was a recurring $29.99 charge to an app I didn't recognize called Second Line, which, it turns out, lets you buy a second private phone number that routes to your existing phone without showing up on your carrier bill. I sat at my desk at work, actual work, the job where I was supposed to be checking rebar tolerances on a pedestrian bridge downtown, and I felt something in my chest go from suspicion to something colder and more certain. She planned this. You don't accidentally acquire a secret phone number. That takes intention. The second break was almost an accident, and it changed the entire shape of the story. I was at my firm's spring client mixer. One of those obligatory networking things with bad wine and worse hors d'oeuvres. And I ran into Ryan Delacroix, my business partner, and before that, my best friend since our sophomore year of college. Ryan had co-founded a structural consulting arm with me 3 years earlier, a smaller side venture we ran together outside our main jobs, doing residential and small commercial assessments. Ryan was the guy who'd been my best man. Ryan had a key to my house for emergencies. Ryan had eaten dinner at my table probably 200 times. Ryan asked casually, over a plastic cup of Chardonnay, how Melissa's new client, the restaurant guy, was working out for her firm. I said I didn't know what he meant. Ryan's face did something small and quick, a flicker, gone almost as fast as it appeared. And he said, "Oh no, nothing, I saw her mention some big new account. Never mind, probably nothing." It was the way he said probably nothing that stuck a splinter in me. Ryan doesn't hedge. Ryan is the most direct person I know. I let it go in the moment, because you don't unravel your best friend's discomfort at a work party in front of colleagues. But I filed it away with everything else in that private log. And that night, at home, I searched Melissa's firm's public client announcements from the last year. There it was, a press release, 5 months old, congratulating her team on landing Voss Hospitality Group as a new key account, spearheaded by Senior Account Director Melissa Whitfield. The photo included in the release showed Melissa shaking hands with a man named Marcus Voss, mid-40s, dark hair going silver at the temples, the kind of expensive casual look that says old money trying to seem approachable. Owner of 4 upscale restaurants across Ohio. I want to tell you my stomach dropped, but honestly it didn't drop. It just went flat and quiet, the way water goes still right before it starts to boil. I had my second person now, not a name, a face, a 4-restaurant empire and a silver-templed smile. I spent the next 2 weeks doing something I never imagined myself capable of. I followed my own wife. Not every day, I couldn't, work made that impossible. But on the days that matched the pattern I'd built, the extra spin class Thursdays, I'd leave for work at my normal time, drive 2 blocks, and park where I could watch our street. 3 separate Thursdays, Melissa left the house at 6:50 a.m. in gym clothes and didn't go to the gym. She drove north on 71, and on 2 of those 3 mornings I followed her, carefully, at a distance, my hands sweating on the wheel, like I was the one doing something wrong, to a Marriott off Polaris Parkway. I sat in a Kroger parking lot across the street for 2 hours each time, feeling something in me die a little more with every minute that passed, until I watched her come back out, hair slightly damp, get back in her car, and drive to an actual spin class for the last 20 minutes of the session, so the class attendance app on her phone would show she'd checked in. That's the part that broke something in me that I don't think ever fully repaired. Not the affair itself exactly. Though God, that was its own kind of devastation. It was the planning, the checking in at the end of class, the secret phone number, the invented contact name. This wasn't a mistake made in a weak moment. This was a woman running a second life with the same competence and attention to detail she brought to her actual job, and I had been married to both versions of her without ever being told the second one existed. But the story had one more twist in it, and this one I did not see coming at all. About 10 days after the Marriott, I was going through our joint investment account, the one that held funds for the down payment on a lake house we'd talked about buying. And I noticed a series of transfers over the previous 7 months, moving a total of just under $34,000 out of that account and into a personal account in Melissa's name only. One she'd opened at a different bank the year before, the same year the new gym started. $34,000. That was our lake house. That was 5 years of both of us skipping vacations and driving cars a year or 2 past when we should have traded them in, all quietly siphoned into an account I didn't know existed. I couldn't see what the money was being spent on. I didn't have access to that account, but I didn't need a forensic accountant to connect the timeline. Hotel deposits, a secret phone, a restaurant magnate, $34,000 moving quietly out of our shared future. And then Ryan called me. It was a Sunday night, nearly 11, which was not like him. His voice had a strange, strangled quality I'd never heard from him before, even during his own divorce 4 years earlier. He said he needed to talk to me in person, that it couldn't wait, and could he come by. I told him Melissa was home. He said, "Not at your house, anywhere else." We met at a diner off Route 3. Ryan sat across from me looking like a man about to confess to a crime, and in a way he was. "I should have told you months ago," he said. "I've been trying to convince myself it wasn't my place. It's not... I don't know how to say this. Dan, I've known for a while, about Melissa and Voss. She told Claire, and Claire told her husband Pete, and Pete's my old college roommate. That's how it got to me. I've been sitting on it for 4 months because I didn't know how to hand you something like this." I sat there in a vinyl booth under fluorescent lights and felt the last structural support of the last 18 months finally give way. Her own sister knew. Her sister's husband knew. My best friend had known for 4 months. I had been the very last person standing in a building everyone else already understood was on fire. "There's one more thing," Ryan said, and I remember bracing myself, thinking nothing left could possibly hurt worse. "The trip you two took to Charleston in April for your anniversary. Voss has a restaurant opening in Charleston. Pete said Melissa told Claire she extended the trip by 2 days for a work thing. She stayed behind. You flew home alone on the Sunday. She came back Tuesday. I remembered that trip. I remembered kissing her goodbye at the airport, feeling lucky, thinking 6 years in, and I still miss her the second she's out of sight. She had used our anniversary trip as cover to spend 2 extra days with him in the same city. I didn't cry in that diner. I want to say that like it's a point of pride, but it wasn't strength. I think I was simply too far past shock to access anything as normal as tears. I just sat there and Ryan sat there, and eventually he said quietly, "What are you going to do?" And for the first time in 3 weeks, I actually knew the answer. "Nothing yet," I said. "Nothing until I'm ready. And Ryan, I need you to not tell her you told me. Not yet." Part 4. The Plan. Here is the thing I want anyone reading this to understand, because I think it's the part that actually matters more than the betrayal itself. I did not want to destroy Melissa out of rage. Rage is cheap. Rage burns fast and leaves you standing in the ashes of your own life, looking just as foolish as the person who wronged you. What I wanted, what I decided over the next several weeks of very cold, very deliberate thinking, was for the truth to become undeniable and unavoidable to everyone who mattered, at the exact moment I chose, on terms that protected me and my future instead of blowing it up alongside hers. I am, again, an engineer. I don't build things to look impressive for 5 minutes and then fail. I build things to hold. The plan had 3 parts, and I spent nearly 2 months quietly assembling all 3 before I moved on any of them. Part 1 was financial protection. I met with a divorce attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia Ullman, who'd been recommended by a coworker who'd gone through his own ugly split, under complete secrecy, paying her retainer in cash from savings Melissa didn't know I had. An old account from before our marriage that I'd simply never mentioned because there'd never been a reason to. Patricia was blunt with me in our first meeting. "Ohio is an equitable distribution state, not community property," she said. "That $34,000 she moved, if we can document it, was moved during the marriage into an account solely in her name, and especially if we can tie it to dissipation of marital assets on an affair that works heavily in your favor at settlement, document everything. Do not confront her. Do not let her know you know anything, not yet. Because the moment she knows, she starts covering tracks and moving money faster than you can trace it, so I documented. Bank statements, the parking receipt, screenshots of the Pilates Sarah contact I'd carefully, quietly confirmed over subsequent weeks by matching call timestamps to a number I eventually identified as the second line number. Hotel confirmation emails I found by checking a shared cloud photo backup. She'd apparently forgotten synced automatically from both our devices, an itinerary from the Charleston extension in her name, and a name I now recognized as Marcus Voss's assistants booked to the same suite. I built a file. A real one, organized, dated, indexed. The kind of documentation I'd used to certify a bridge was safe to open to traffic. Except this bridge was my marriage, and I was documenting exactly how and where it had failed. Part 2 was the business. This was the part that took the longest to work out, because it involved Ryan, and because it involved a genuine gray area I had to think through carefully. Ryan had known for 4 months and hadn't told me. That hurt, and it complicated things between us for a while. I won't pretend it didn't. But I came to understand the more we talked that Ryan had been genuinely torn, caught in an impossible position between loyalty to me and a promise to Claire not to blow up her sister's marriage before Claire found the right moment to do it herself. I decided, eventually, that Ryan's failure was one of paralysis, not malice, and I chose to forgive it, because I needed him. And because 6 years of real friendship shouldn't be discarded over 4 months of a hard secret badly kept. What I needed from Ryan was information, and eventually, cooperation. Because it turned out Marcus Voss wasn't just a restaurateur with a wandering eye and a fat wallet. Voss Hospitality Group was, at that exact time, in the process of contracting our small consulting firm, mine and Ryan's, for structural assessments on 2 new restaurant builds. Voss didn't know that D. Whitfield Structural Consulting belonged to the husband of the woman he was sleeping with. His assistant had found us through a referral, entirely coincidentally, months before I even found the receipt. I hadn't personally worked that account. Ryan had been handling the client relationship directly. I am not going to pretend I didn't consider for about 1 entire week simply torching that contract, refusing the work, walking away, denying Voss the service out of spite. Patricia talked me out of it, and honestly, so did my own better judgment. Burning a legitimate business deal to make a point, she said, helps no one but him. If he ever finds out you had a personal reason and can frame you as unprofessional or vindictive. Do the job, do it well, get paid, and let the timing of what you already know work in your favor later. So we did the job. Ryan and I inspected 2 restaurant sites for Marcus Voss over 6 weeks that spring, and I sat in conference rooms with the man who was sleeping with my wife, shook his hand, discussed load-bearing requirements for his rooftop patio expansion, and smiled and said nothing, and felt something in me go very quiet and very hard, like steel under tension holding. Part 3 was the reveal itself, and this was the piece I thought about longest, because I wanted it to accomplish something specific. I wanted Melissa to lose the story before she ever got the chance to write her own version of it. I have known since childhood how affairs get spun after the fact. My own father cheated on my mother when I was 9, and I watched him spend the next 15 years quietly recasting himself as misunderstood, as trapped in an unhappy marriage, as a good man who made one mistake, right up until my mother, exhausted and worn down, half believed it too. I was not going to let that happen here. I wanted the truth to arrive whole, undeniable, and simultaneously to everyone who mattered, before Melissa or Marcus had a single hour to control the narrative. I picked a date, the last weekend of June, exactly 1 week before Voss Hospitality's flagship restaurant relaunch, a black tie event Melissa's firm was managing, that Melissa herself had spent 8 months orchestrating, that would be attended by roughly 200 people, including Marcus Voss's wife, Eleanor, whom I had learned about only 3 weeks earlier, and who, it turned out, had no idea her husband was involved with his marketing director. I had not planned to involve Eleanor Voss in any dramatic public way. I want to be clear about that, because I think there is a version of this story where the revenge becomes cruel toward a woman who'd done nothing wrong, and that was never my intention. What I decided instead was simpler and I think fairer. Everyone who deserved the truth would get it directly from me, privately, at the same time, before the event that mattered most to both Melissa's career and Marcus's business ever took place, so that the people involved could make their own choices with full information, instead of me making a spectacle for an audience. 2 weeks before the relaunch, I filed for divorce. Quietly. Patricia had already drafted everything. The moment the paperwork was ready, I had it served to Melissa at home on a Tuesday evening, with the full financial documentation attached, laid out in exhibits, the transfers, the hotel records, the Charleston itinerary discrepancy, all of it. I was there when she opened it. I'd chosen to be deliberately, because after months of being the only person who didn't know, I wanted, at minimum, to watch her face in the exact second she understood that I did. She went white. Then she cried and reached for excuses. It wasn't what it looked like. It had already ended, I was going to tell you. All the sentences I imagine every unfaithful spouse reaches for, the way a drowning person reaches for anything floating nearby. I let her finish. I didn't raise my voice. I said one thing, the only thing I'd rehearsed. I know about the money too. I know about Charleston. I know about all of it, Mel. I've known for 2 months. You don't get to write this story anymore. I already did. Then I told her the second piece, the part I knew would matter more to her than almost anything else in the moment, that her sister Claire had known for 4 months and had chosen not to tell her own husband either, chosen to let it sit, and that the silence around her had been much wider than she understood. I wasn't trying to be cruel by telling her that. I told her because I thought she deserved to understand in that moment that she had been the architect of an isolation she didn't know she'd built, that the people around her had been quietly carrying her secret while she thought she was the only one holding it. The same week, I sent Eleanor Voss a short, careful letter. Not an accusation, not a scene, just documented facts, dates, the itinerary, delivered privately to her home, with a note that said only that I thought she deserved to know before the relaunch, and that whatever she chose to do with the information was entirely hers to decide. I never heard directly from Eleanor. But I learned, 3 weeks later, through the same grapevine that had eventually reached me, that she filed for divorce from Marcus the following month, and that her family's money, which had originally financed 2 of his 4 restaurants, left with her. Marcus Voss's flagship relaunch went forward as scheduled. I heard it was a strange, tense evening. Melissa didn't attend. She told her firm she had a family emergency. Eleanor didn't attend either. Whatever Marcus told the 200 guests that night about his wife's absence, I never found out. And honestly, by then, I didn't care to. Part 5. What held and what didn't. I'm not going to pretend the aftermath was clean or satisfying in the tidy way revenge stories sometimes promise. It wasn't. The divorce took another 5 months to finalize. Patricia was right about the dissipation of assets argument. The settlement ended up weighted meaningfully in my favor. Enough that I kept the house and came out with something resembling financial footing instead of the wreckage I'd feared during the worst weeks of that spring. Melissa moved into an apartment near her firm. I heard, secondhand through Claire, who eventually reached out to me with an apology I wasn't sure I wanted but accepted anyway, that things between Melissa and Marcus didn't survive the fallout. Whatever he'd been to her, he wasn't willing to be it once it cost him his marriage, his wife's family money, and half his restaurant empire's original financing. I don't know if that should feel like justice. Some days it does. Some days it just feels like 2 people got exactly what their choices were always going to cost them, and I happened to be standing close enough to watch. Ryan and I are still partners. It took real work to get back to something solid after the 4 months he sat on what he knew. We had a handful of hard conversations that summer, some of them ugly, before I understood that his silence had come from love badly executed, not indifference. I don't think I could have rebuilt that friendship if I hadn't already learned, the hard way, that people are usually more complicated than the worst thing they did, or failed to do. I still have the shoebox of napkin notes in my closet. I haven't been able to throw it away, and I haven't been able to open it either. Maybe someday. Not yet. The thing I keep coming back to, a year and some months out from the day a parking receipt fell out of a coat pocket, isn't anger anymore. It's something quieter. I spent my whole career learning that structures fail slowly, under stress you can't always see from the outside, long before the moment they visibly come apart. I used to think that knowledge only applied to bridges. I know better now. It applies to marriages, to trust, to every relationship you assume is solid simply because it's been standing for a long time. I don't regret how I handled it. I didn't scream. I didn't destroy anything I didn't have to. I gathered the truth the way I'd gather evidence for any structure I was asked to certify, and when I was sure of what I had, I let it stand on its own weight in front of the people who needed to see it, and I stepped back. If there's a lesson in any of this, and I've had a lot of long nights to think about what it might be, it's this. Pay attention to the small things. The parking receipt, the new perfume, the phone turned face down. Not because suspicion should run your life, but because the truth almost never announces itself all at once. It leaves a trail of very small, very quiet cracks, long before the day the whole thing finally gives way. I ignored mine for the better part of a year because it was easier to trust than to look closely. I don't make that mistake anymore. I check twice now on everything.